Bryan Wellbrock, and I retired as a lieutenant commander, LDO. Actually started, I was in college, and the Vietnam draft was being started back up, and was watching the TV the night that they were drawing the numbers and stuff for the order in which they were going to be drafting people. My birthday came up as number 87 in the little capsules that they were drawing. And I thought, well, I've got a little bit of time and stuff because I was in the middle of a semester. But at the end of it, when they did the whole thing, they said, well, we're going to activate the first 100 numbers, which caused a whole lot of us a lot of concern. So the next day, me and 3 or 4 of my friends went down to the different recruiters, which at that time were all in the courthouse, and talked to some people in there. And I enlisted in the Navy, another guy did, another 2 buddies went into the Air Force, and so that got us started from there. And stuff. But it was all because of that lottery and stuff that they did that I probably came in when I did. Went from, they gave us a little delayed entry thing, which they still have a delayed entry program from what I understand, which was enough time to at least finish that semester that I was in college, so I didn't waste all my money on tuition and books, stuff like that. But as soon as that was over, I was stuck on a plane in New Orleans and flown up to Chicago to go to Great Lakes for boot camp, and spent a few months up there in boot camp, most of which was in the winter when it was really, really cold, and there's nothing more fun. And I've talked to other people too, and they said nothing more fun than going to boot camp in Great Lakes in the winter because you just freeze yourself out there and all the things that you're doing. I never had anybody shave my head, and then as soon as you got done getting your head shaved, they'd make you stand in 2 lines and they'd hit you with about 8 or 9 hypodermic needles all at the same time. You know, it's like that was kind of a culture shock. But I don't know, it was a whole different world. I mean, you see some of the things and stuff and in movies and stuff. It's not as exaggerated as you would think, but it teaches you. You learn at boot camps. Primary goal is to kind of destroy what you were, to build you into something that is better and to be something different. You're not a couch potato laying around the house. You become part of something, and you learn how to become part of something. And teamwork is what it's all about, and you know that's what they foster in. Yeah, you learn things about the Navy. You learn how to march in a straight line. You know how to you learn how to eat as fast as you can. But the basic premise of that whole thing is to take you from an individual into a team, and you pick up on that. And I mean, some of them do, some of them don't. And there's a certain amount that don't make it through boot camp and everything, but that teaches you what you need to know for getting into those watch environments that you're going to be doing things as teams. So that was the biggest transition for me, I think, was more of becoming less of an individual, more of a team member, more of a team person. But once I finished that, I went to Communications Yeoman School, which didn't even exist anymore. It only went up through like 3rd class. And essentially what they were doing is they were needing so many extra radiomen, but the basic skills of radioman was sending out messages and stuff. So we were taught that basic function in order to supplement and stuff the radio crews and stuff on all the different ships and everything that were going, because message traffic volumes had gone so crazy. The unfortunate part about that is it only went to CYN 3, Communications Yeoman 3, at which time you had to make a decision to either go radioman or go yeoman. And I think I would imagine all of us, the decision was based on what we were being used for as a CYN. In my particular case, I went into communications. Some other people went into yeoman, and then when you went to 2nd class, you just kind of used that pipeline, and kind of went up from there. So when I came out of CYNA school, I went down to, got orders down to Naval Auxiliary Air Station, Ellison Field in Pensacola, Florida. Doesn't even exist anymore. But essentially it was a helicopter training base. And they had those old Sikorsky crazy-looking helicopters and stuff that they were training and stuff with down there. But so I did a 2-year tour of stuff there, and then when that one was up, I got a set of orders to the USS Intrepid, CVS 11, and she was out of Quonset Point, Rhode Island. And again, transferred in the winter to Rhode Island, and got there the week before Easter, so there wasn't a lot going on and stuff on the ship. And so a whole bunch of us had checked in and stuff during that period of time. It snowed like crazy, and so my first official job on the Intrepid was to grab a shovel and get out there and help everybody else shovel off a flight deck. And you can about imagine the size of that space was, so that was kind of like make work to keep us busy and give us something to do. But eventually got assimilated down into radio and stuff like that, and started working in actually communications related functions. I spent about a year and a half on there, and I was getting close to my EAOS. There was two carriers that were CVS's. One was the Intrepid, the other one was a Wasp. They were both up in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. You had to go across the airfield and everything, so you had to park and walk across the airfield sometimes if they couldn't get over there. And the wind howled up there in Quonset Point like crazy, and it would snow, and it was cold, and it would be down there and stuff. So you get on board, there's no heat, or if there's heat, it's just in certain places. And so she was not very well habitability-wise, and it was just because of not just her age, but the way those two ships were built. They were made out of what we understood, and I don't know if this is a fact or not, but they were actually the Iowa-class battleships. There were going to be 6 of them, and they only built 4. And the word that got around, I can't verify it, but we were told that those other 2 became the Wasp and the Intrepid, because they had the engineering plants and everything in there that it took to make the steam and everything that they would need for launching and recovering aircraft. And they just went and put a flat top on wherever it was at, put a hangar bay on her and built it up from there and turned them in. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of, it didn't seem like there was a lot of care. I was young at the time. We had the old canvas bottom racks, and when you got on board, they give you a bunch of line and one of the pieces of canvas with all the grommets in it, and make you tie your own. And berthing and stuff was the junior guy was always on top, and you work your way down. We were 3 high in berthing, and you had to jump up and grab hold of a pipe, swing yourself up into the rack. And the first time we got underway, I wasn't thinking much about it, because you don't think where you are, you just think where your space is at. And I was crawled up in the rack and got off watch, and I was sitting up there, or laying up there, and just about to go to sleep, and all of a sudden there's this huge crash, or what I thought was a huge crash. What I didn't know or didn't realize is that my rack was right underneath the number 3 wire of the flight deck. So what happened was, and that's the wire they all aim for. And yeah, between me and the number 3 wire was about this much room, and then whatever the thickness of the flight deck was. And you get up in the morning, there's paint flecks all over your bed, and stuff from the paint and stuff coming off the ceiling and stuff in it. But yeah, that was not the best place in the world to sleep if you're a watchstander, but yes. So I had kind of decided that if the quality of ships were all like what we had on the Intrepid, which was a really old ship, that I wasn't too sure if I was going to make a career out of it or not. So they sent me back to Quonset Point, and I was just working there on the base in the radio site and stuff that they had there. And I had a really good chief there, talked to me about a lot of things, and didn't really force me into anything, but just gave me a lot of things to think about. And I had a wife at the time and family, so the benefits, none of those things that you really knew about. But it gave me an insight into looking into something that had potential to do other things. But I told him, talking to the detailers, they said, well, you have to go back to sea and finish your sea tour. I said, well, I ain't going back to the Intrepid. If I go back to sea, it can't be that one. So he talked to the chief with him and stuff and everything, and got me on the William H. Stanley, which was a brand spanking new guided missile destroyer. I was part of the first crew that was relieving the plank owners. Brand new, and everything in there was like, wow, we had air conditioning, we had heat, we had good food. She didn't ride too well because she was very top heavy, but you got used to that. But she was Brand new ship. I mean, it's about 2 years old when I went on board. The guided missile frigates had a ASW capability. We had sonar, we had surface radars, we had the ability to be a threat both on and below the surface. And she was fast. I mean, she was quick, and we had a small crew, very tight crew. We had a great skipper on there, and we had a great chief, and she was as a warship. I mean, she was a really fine-tuned machine. Being new, we had all the newest stuff on board, and very few casualties and stuff because everything worked. She was boiler powered. She wasn't a turbine, so I never did get to experience a ship that was propelled with turbines. But yeah, she was quick. The only thing about her, she was top heavy. And most ships that size, carriers ride just about like where we're sitting, you know, most of the time. It takes a really rough sea to move that thing around. But the DLGs, they had a lot of radars and stuff up that made her a little bit top heavy, so she had a real great roll. And the rougher the seas were, the more she'd roll. And I used to joke with the kids and stuff. I said, I have in my lifetime left footprints on bulkheads because of the roll of the ship, and then she would do these little figure eights and come up, and then she'd come back down because you know you're into the sea, and at the same time you're rolling, and she'd go up and she'd go back down. It's like, oh gracious sakes! But yeah, she wasn't the best ride, you know, she wasn't as small as the destroyer, so I can't really say I was a tin can sailor. But at the same time, we experienced a lot of stuff on the way. But it was just the size of the crew and the leadership that we had at the time just made it a really great experience. It changed my whole outlook on the Navy by being on that ship, because it was a small radio shack and you developed some really close relationships with people. All the kind of things you think about the military is about. Carrier doesn't foster that too well because of its size. The smaller ships, it's amazing how many people and stuff that you really, there's still a couple of people that I know and still correspond with and everything. And this was a long time ago when I was on there. So that kind of kept me going. And from my EAOS come up on there, typically I was in a proper pipeline from years in service and stuff. I'd have to be able to go out to San Diego and go through RMB school, the Radioman Class B school, which was, I don't know, 4 or 5 months long or something like that. And I'd really come to like that rating. I mean, all of us, we were never trained it as a CYN. You just got into the basics of teletype operations and stuff. But going on to Stanley, as small as the crew is, you got to do everything. You got to do, you know, work transmitters, work receivers, work with the message traffic. And you really got a good feel for the complete scope of the rating. And so the B school and stuff really fine-tunes you for that and stuff when you come out of that. When I graduated from there, I went down to NAVCOM Stay Key West, Florida. Very interesting place. Again, not a really small place, but it was small enough to where you had 3 or 4 or 5 people in your watch section. Made watch section supervisor, and had a good crew. This was the same time when some of the females were starting to come in more into the military, and they were coming in at different ratings, some of which were communications. And I had the first 2 that were assigned to NAVCOM Stay Key West assigned to me because I was the junior watch supervisor. So the other first class, I was the second class still at the time. The other first class said, well, let him have them. Turned out to be 2 of the best workers I ever trained. I mean, superb young ladies. And it set my mindset, you know, from that point on, that anybody can do those jobs in the Navy. It has nothing to do with who you are, what you are. It has everything to do with what you want to do and how you do it. And that set that tone for me for the rest of my career because of that experience. Coming out of Key West, I was lucky enough to where every time I rotated, there was some kind of a school were something that just kind of fit my pipeline, and it was always kind of cutting edge stuff. And satellite communications was just becoming a thing. And I got orders to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, which is an Army base, because they were the only base that trained for all the branches of service in satellite communications, and went through SATCOM school. That was a whole new experience in communications, because it wasn't the typical stuff that you use with transmitters, receivers, and HF and all that kind of stuff. And I really, really loved what SATCOM was all about. I mean, it was hard to understand. Your mind had to change your thought process a whole lot to accept some of the different things that it was, but it was really neat the way it worked. And came out of SATCOM school and ended up down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, with a satellite communications detachment down there, which was the first application of SATCOM in the Guantanamo Bay organization. And we were replacing some HF circuits that they had to use that were very unreliable. They were very susceptible to intercept and all that kind of stuff, and jamming. SATCOM doesn't have that problem, and because of the way it's working with satellites. So it really improved command and control and stuff there on the base, and we were aware of that, and they were talking to us about it and telling us. They came out a couple of times and said, you know, you guys have really changed our lives out here. And it also did a big morale booster for the people there that were stationed at Gitmo on the base itself, because we had several channels, and we could take one of those channels with a phone line, and the phone line went down to headquarters, but they gave permission for us to take that offline every morning about 10 o'clock until noon, and guys could come out there and they could call their detailer. And that was a rare, I mean, you couldn't do that before then out here. The correspondence didn't exist. You just got a set of orders. Now, all of a sudden, they had the opportunity to call their detailers and talk to them about different duty stations, their family situations, and things like that. So we felt good about that, because we were providing a really keen service and stuff to the base, and something they didn't have, and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty neat. From Gitmo, I went to comm server on 2. Well, let me back up a little bit, because while I was there, I was filling a chief billet as a second class, or as a first. I made first class there, and I was filling a chief's billet for a while. And we had an LDO, limited duty officer, OIC, that was assigned to us. And we were talking one day, and he asked me, he said, do you know anything about the LDO program? And I said, yeah, I know what it is. And he said, have you ever seen the application or anything like that? I said, no, I really haven't. And he said, well, here's one, and I want you to fill this thing out, and I want it on my desk Monday morning. And I went, okay, boss, I mean, if that's what you want, but yeah. And he says, you need to fill this out, because I think you are looking at your record and stuff and some of your past evaluations and the things that you got into. You're in the cutting edge with SATCOM and all that kind of stuff that would make a big difference. And I thought about it again. He thought about it. He says, he gave me some of the best advice I've ever heard, and I use it all the time with my people and stuff. And what he told me was, put it in. If you get picked up, fine. If you don't, then you'll never go through life saying, I wonder what if. And it made a big difference. And talked to my wife. We had a couple of kids at the time. Actually, we had 3. My 4th daughter was born down in Gitmo. And we talked about it a little bit, and so I put it in and stuff. Didn't think much more about it, because I was coming up close to my rotation date and stuff from down there. We transferred up to Earl, New Jersey. They're pretty much in charge of some of the replenishment ships and stuff. They go out to sea and stuff and work with different vessels and stuff, that fuel, groceries, all that kind of stuff that ships take on at sea. And I had seen that evolution of many times, being on 2 different ships and stuff doing that. But I was only there for a very short period of time, because my next door neighbor in housing was the chief radioman that was in charge of the message center over right there on the base. And I got a call about 9:30 one evening, and from the supervisor that said, you need to come over to radio and pick up some message traffic, which I did sometimes at night, because we would get messages and stuff sometimes that needed to go up to the staff. And I went out there and they said, I need to see your ID card. So I showed him my ID card. Said, well, you're the wrong person. And I said, you're not on our access list. I know I'm on your access list. I'm authorized to pick up traffic. He said, no, the guy we got in this message here says that it's a different person. It should be an incident Wellbrock instead of an RM1 Wellbrock. And I thought, oh. So that's how I was notified that I got picked up. It was kind of a prank thing that Chief pulled on me and stuff over there at radio. But yeah, it changed everything. So I wasn't there very long because of the commissioning. You don't have much time between those and stuff. So I was commissioned in '80 and went from there. I got set of orders to Saratoga. And I thought, okay, I'll be going out there as the assistant communications officer. And there was a commander on there at the time his name was Jack Shaw. And a lot of people knew him and said he was one of the best afloat communicators, line officer communicators that they ever knew. And going out there as his ACOM, as assistant communications officer, is going to really be a good deal for you. And you're going to enjoy working for him, and he's going to teach you a lot. And so I'm looking forward to this. And because I'm a brand spanking new guy, you know, with khakis on, and I was looking forward to it. The weekend before, I was supposed to fly out to the Med because she was deployed. I got a phone call at the house. My wife answered it, and she said, oh, and it was on a Sunday morning. And I said, what's up? And she said, well, it's a phone call for Hugh. And I said, who is it? She said, it's your detailer. And I'm thinking, why would my detailer call me Sunday morning when I'm supposed to fly out Tuesday to go over and pick up the ship unless something happened to my orders? They're changing them for some reason. That wasn't what the call was all about. His call was to let me know that Commander Shaw, who was Lieutenant Commander at the time, had just picked up a commander. They were out on the beach celebrating with some the other people in the wardroom and everything. A taxi cab ran up onto the sidewalk and essentially ran over him and killed him. And there were some people there that were, the flight surgeon was there and stuff. They couldn't do nothing for him. So he said, I can't force you to take these orders because, you know, you're a brand spanking new guy. I mean, a new incident going out there in a lieutenant commander billet, but I have nobody to send in behind you. If you can go out there for a while, the first guy that comes out of comm officer school is going to come in behind you. And he said, we've already talked to the CO and the XO. They said, you know, they were willing to make a run at it. And so yeah, I flew out that thing and chased it all over the Med for about 3 weeks because it kept moving in one spot. I'm in another spot. I'm flying to this station, and all of a sudden she's not there anymore. But finally picked her up in the Med and stuff, and had an interview with the CO and the XO, and they said, you know, radio is really working smooth as silk, and which was no surprise to me because of Jack Shaw's reputation. But yeah, when I flew on, the guy, the ACOMO that was there, came out, got me, took me down to the office and stuff, and he said, all that paperwork that you see on that desk over there, that's all the stuff that's going on. That helicopter you just came in is my ride off, and goodbye. And that was my turnover. So yeah, it was a scary start, really scary start and stuff to do that. But I did have a great Radio Shack in there, and I also remembered something that a senior chief had told me once, that you should always tell people that are doing things, if they're doing a good job, just to continue doing it. And his leadership style was only get involved if you have to. If you're doing the jobs that I'm asking you to do the way I want you to do them, then that's the way the things should be. So I got the chiefs together and I said, you know, I talked to the CO and the XO, and they said everything's working good in here. I said, if you promise not to give me a reason to get involved, I promise not to get involved, you know. And they kind of laughed about it because it really wasn't that way, but that was the way I put it to them. And I had a great master chief on it that really helped me out a lot. And but yeah, scary time. That was one of the scariest times of my life. I thought, man, this is a career killer for sure. It turned out to be just the opposite because of the way things happened on that. The time we were on board, you had to be really careful because during flight ops and stuff, that's a dangerous place up there. And if you don't know what you're doing, you stay out of it. But one of the neatest things was having the signal bridge as well, because I had signals in there also, the signal bridge and the radio, was I could go up in the signal bridge and stuff at night, and you could go up and walk up in front up in there, and you could watch night flights. And night launches and night recoveries are, I mean, my hat's off to those guys. I have a good friend whose son became a fighter pilot later in my career and in his life, but yeah, just the amazement of the everything's choreographed. I mean, everything's perfect up there. If it isn't, somebody gets hurt, and everybody knows that, so you stay off of that. But just, I think the thing I enjoyed there a lot was being exposed to what a carrier is all about. I mean, it's an amazing machine. We came into Philadelphia. We came into our home port, ended up going up to Philadelphia. Saratoga was also the first carrier that went through the Service Life Extension Program, the SLEP program. So I got to work with some Secret Service communications guys, because the vice president rode up the river with us and stuff like that. So we had to set up all their stuff, because they don't do anything in the blind, and learn some really cool things about what they do for a living. And then we started SLEP. There were no rule books, and there were no guides, and there were no plans, other than the fact that we're going to extend the service life of the ship 20 years or so. And the goal was to build that plan day by day as we did it for the follow-on ships that were coming in. So every day was a lessons learned day. We had to sit down and do all these things and stuff. And our chief engineer, which is another guy that was a tremendous leader, was in charge, and with the captain. And we literally wrote the book for Service Life Extension Program for carriers and stuff with what we did. When the Forrestal came in behind them, we had volumes of things that we turned over to them and said, this is what we did. And this is our lessons learned, the good stuff and the bad stuff, the things to watch out for, the things to do. And so that, again, it's just another crazy opportunity, you know, that went along with an abnormal career. That's probably not the right term, but you know, it kind of worked out that way. But so I went from my rotation came up and stuff after that. We were just about finished with SLEP, and a new commo came in behind me and stuff, that because they were going to be starting getting out of there and everything. And I ended up getting orders to Corpus Christi, Texas, the Naval Air Station down there, which is a small comm center, and was the comm officer down there. It was just a normal tour. The only thing that was really great is that my wife's parents only lived about 75 miles away, and the Navy keeps you in places where it's really hard to do that. And with the girls, the kids and stuff, that gave them a chance to have a lot of good quality 2 years with the kids and stuff like that. So it was a relaxing, more of a relaxing thing and stuff there. While I was in Corpus, because my detailer that sent me to the Saratoga made that phone call on Sunday morning, was also the detailer that sent me to Corpus. And there was a problem down there that he needed fixed, and I won't go into that, but it had the potential to become a big problem. And he said, I need you to go down and put this fire out. So I did, and when I'm leaving there, I'm calling him again. I still had the same detailer. He was getting close to his rotation date. And I said, I understand that the communications officer job on the Saratoga, on the New Jersey, is coming up. He said, yeah, it is. And I said, I want that job. He said, well, yeah, you and a whole bunch of other people. And I said, okay, let's talk about that for a minute. You remember when you sent me to Saratoga? And he said, yeah. I said, I could have said no, and you would have been in a big, big problem then. And everything. And then when I came off of that, and you called me and said you wanted me to go down to Corpus Christi and fix this problem for you down there. And he said, yeah, I remember that call too. And I said, okay, and this is my second sea tour. How many of these other guys are making their second sea tour? Well, none of them, that wanted it. It would be their first sea tour. I said, they're going to have to wait in line as far as I'm concerned. So he called me back about 2 days later. He said it's yours. He said the job's yours. Because at that time, the way they were manning up the New Jersey was you didn't just get orders to that. They would speak to you about that. They would contact the command. And if the CO gave you a thumbs up and he gave him a full rundown on it. He says, yeah, he wants you to come out here. So that's how I got on the battleship. And that was a dream of a lifetime. I tried to get onto it when it was in Vietnam, in commission during Vietnam as a second class, and they had a waiting list. And you would look at that, call them every once in a while. You're 14 on the list, or you're 12 on the list, and I worked my way down to, I think, number 3 or number 4 on the waiting list to go out there as a RM1. And I called him. He said, well, they're not taking anybody anymore because they're fixing to decommission it. I thought, what a bummer. So I thought that was my, the end of the opportunity. And of course, with the Persian Gulf thing, they brought her back in. And so that's how I ended up getting on that thing with a set of orders. Well, I was a communications officer. So that meant I had radio as well as the signal shack, the signal gang upstairs. And so I had both of those divisions. And we had, by that time, the ships were outfitted with satellite communications. And my background, I understood that very well. A lot of them were just trying to get used to it. And so we made transitions into that part, HF, UHF, VHF, all the normal stuff. The signal guys, I had a great signal crew up on the signal bridge. And the funniest thing, I guess, is in doing, kind of to regress just a hair, in the process of doing all that, I got my amateur radio license. The novice, the technician, the general class, and everything. So I was doing those kind of things at the same time from my house, especially down in Gitmo, since they didn't have telephones. We had a system down there when anybody came aboard, they filled out a little piece of paper and and stuff, and we could send these things back and call and say, hey, your son, your daughter, whatever, has arrived safely and stuff like that. And we could even get them out to my house or whatever and run a phone patch to them and link them up for a few minutes to talk to mom and dad. That was just on the amateur radio. I mean, it was something different. But yeah, the New Jersey was she was a dream that came true. And because of that, there's really no way to describe how that ride was, other than, it's on the battleship of the Navy. And yeah, I considered that a privilege every day to be on board that ship. I mean, she was an old ship, but because coming back in the way she did, a lot of habitability things had been done to her. And so air conditioning was pretty reliable. The heating and stuff was reliable. So climate-wise, I mean, she was every bit as good as probably a lot of ships newer than her. And that makes a big difference. I mean, if you're comfortable, then you work. If you're freezing to death or you're sweating, then that's a different deal. But no, I think the modernization and stuff that she got was really good, and it made it much better for the crew. Being an old ship, because your first thought's a ship that old, no heat, no air, it's just going to be terrible. But no, she was good to her people, and we knew it. But yeah, it was a rare opportunity. New Jersey, I came in as the commo and stuff. I was ordered into it. But the unique part about it was that the New Jersey also had a fairly large complement of warrant officers and limited duty officers like myself, LDOs. So you weren't singled for this or whatever. The wardroom was very tight, and it was one of the few places, because we were all as professional as we were. Everybody's going to mess up someday, somewhere, somehow, and people are going to pick on you. It just all depends on how thick your hide is. And that was the one beautiful thing about the New Jersey, is that if you messed up something, they all going to get on you. But they do it because they know in a few days they're going to have something happen and it's going to be their turn in the fire. So there was this it was probably the tightest group of people I've ever worked with because of that. We all had that professional attitude. We respected each other, but we could sure take a punch at you in a heartbeat if something went wrong, because the next day it's going to be my fault for something, and I'm going to have to take it. And that was that's kind of the neatest thing. The camaraderie was probably tighter on there than any place I'd ever been. Our officers' mess was really, I mean, we had some great cooks, and the guys were really good about it. I mean, they turned out some good meals with what we had. And of course, you go on a deployment, and pretty soon you start running out of things. So that'll affect anybody and everybody. You know, fresh provisions kind of go after about a couple of weeks, and then some other things start going until you get a grocery ship come alongside and start getting some fresh stuff. But no, the whole experience on New Jersey was just exactly what I was hoping it would be. When I first got on board, she had just come back from Beirut, and all the stuff that she had done over there, and stuff. So there was kind of a drawdown period a little bit and stuff when I first got on board. But then we were quickly working on a lot of other things that we had to start doing. Unfortunately, we were a showboat. There were a lot of times we had VIPs on board. We made a lot of runs down to San Diego to pick people up and stuff up there and take people back down. So a lot of VIP things. We went to San Francisco for the stand-up of the ComNav base San Francisco thing. As a platform, so, you know, they needed some people, and I'm not going to get into a really funny story about that, but I got to carry a politician's shoes. I'll leave it at that because of the teak deck. And if you're female and you got spike heels on, that gap in there, your heels will fit right down in some of those gaps. So she didn't feel like she wanted to take them off and do that. She just handed them to me and made me carry them. But I won't share who that is. But that's my one claim to fame with politicians. But we took. I mean, it was everything we did was professional. We didn't do anything that was just weird or anything. We did those kind of roles. Because I was a geographic bachelor living on board, I took advantage of that to just really get to know the ship. I mean, I was down in places all over the place, you know, in the evenings and stuff like that. I'd pop in somewhere and say, okay, where am I at and what do you guys do for a living? And just sit down there and explain some of the engineering parts and other things like that. And I did a lot of those kind of things and stuff. And I did tours. I mean, I was probably one of the 2 or 3 go-to guys for tours. I'd be sitting in the wardroom doing something, the XO would come in and say, you know, you got a set of whites ready to go? I said, always. And he said, okay, I got some people coming, I need you to take them around. And took them on a lot of tours and stuff. That's what I did with my time, was shared my ship with other people, and loved it. We were fixing to do the 86 Westback, and there's a 3-month period before a deployment that you're really busy. You know, you're training new people that are coming on board, you're making sure the equipment works. There are a lot of different things that you have to do to just make sure that you deploy. I mean, it's one thing to go out for 10 days or so and come back. It's another whole different thing to be gone for 8 or 9 months. So engineering is doing a lot of work, communications is doing a lot of work, the operations guys are radars and all the kind of stuff like that. You're exercising and working everything. If it doesn't work, you're getting it worked on. And so I was going back and forth to the mess decks, and one day they have a bulletin board back there with all kinds of little things stuck up on it. There was a notice up there that the chaplain, one of the chaplains, was interested in starting up a clown troupe. And I thought, this is crazy, you know. And so I went about it and saw it a few times, and he was having an organizational meeting one day. It was coming up a little bit closer. And one day I noticed a couple other people looking at this thing and stuff, and we were just standing there joking about the clown troupe. And so I don't know what compelled me to do it, but he had an organizational meeting. We went to that. There was about 15, 18 of us, I guess, or so. And he kind of said what his vision was. The head chaplain had met a professional clown that he knew personally. And they had kind of talked about that, and he said, hey, if you got people that would want to do this, I would be willing to come and train those people professionally and not just set them loose. So we did, And we went to the first meeting. It sounded kind of stupid. We met the clown came the next time, and he's talking to us and everything. And I just got involved in this thing. And what we ended up doing was becoming semi-professional, I guess would be the best words. He taught us all the etiquette. He taught us all the other stuff. We had to go find our own, put together our own outfits. He taught us we had to order all the grease paints and stuff to do things. He taught us the proper way to do all of those things, put it on. It's actually a layer of skin when you get done. Kids can mess with it and stuff you can't mess with. But it really got to be something that was unique, that was different. And so we decided to keep working on it. He worked with us for about 2.5, 3 months, I guess. We actually got certificates from graduating from Size Clown School. And we had to pick our own names, develop our own character. He helped us with faces and stuff like that. And so we got to a point where we thought we might be able to pull this off. I mean, we're not sure what this is. And so we thought we'd pick on the daycare center over on the base there in Long Beach first and see what happened. I had duty that day, and a bunch of them went over there. They came back and was like, I don't know, you know, this is tougher than we think it's going to be, but we think it's a good start. And if we keep at it, I don't know. So we did. We stuck this thing out, and we deployed and continued to work on things on the ship, working on skits and some other things like that. So we weren't just doing individual, I mean, running around acting silly and making balloon animals and stuff like that. You do those one-on-one, but you have to have something for the group to do. So we had some skits and stuff that we started developing, and I paired up with a BTC chief down in Mike Ailes. You just talked to him, one of the chiefs that worked for him and stuff, and him and I worked up some skits, and some other ones did too, so we went there so we could entertain with funny things and stuff like that. As we got into this thing, we deployed, and we stopped at Pearl Harbor first, because you turn over, the guys coming from Westpac meet you, you turn over all the stuff that's going on and stuff, and so we decided to go up there and work at Tripper Army Hospital, which is a huge hospital there on Oahu. And we got in there, and we thought, well, we'll go to the orthopedic ward, because those are just ambulatory people. And we're in there joking around and messing with people and doing things and having a good time, and so were they. And we thought, you know, maybe this thing will work. And we kind of worked on the thing and stuff. The chaplain that started this whole thing was a priest, a Catholic priest. And he's with us. He's also one of the clowns. And we're going around doing different things. We finished that. We've gone with, and he said, well, we had some time. I wondered if we go up and do some of the pediatric areas. So we went into those. We had some fun with some kids and stuff like that. And we got into one area that was, I don't know what it was, but it was some rooms and stuff. And there was one, we kind of poked a head in, or he did. And there was an elderly lady sitting in there with a little girl sitting laying in a bed. And he said, can we come in and stuff? And so we did, and went in, and she woke up and stuff, just enough to look around, see who we were and everything, gives a big old smile, and went back to sleep. Come to find out, they were just, she was probably about, I don't know, 6 or 8. And her grandmother was there because her mother had just gone home to take a bath and stuff, but they were there 24/7, and there was no hope. And so Father Bob asked her, you know, well, he never really said, you know, what faith are you or anything, but he said, here's what I am in real life, and would it be okay if I did a blessing? And we just pray over her for a minute. So we kind of all gathered around the bed, and we did, and he did that and everything. And at the time, it's like, this ain't what we signed up for, you know. And so we got through all of that and stuff, and we walked out real quietly, and the little girl had come to a second time when he was blessing her, smiled at him, this huge smile, and just right back to sleep. And so we left, and we were just quiet. And we left out of there and stuff. We could, I don't know. And we all gathered outside. They have a big area, stuff out in the grounds. We kind of did a hot wash up out there, and we were talking about it, and we had one guy said, I can't do this. Are we going to get more of this? And so we're going to be working in children's hospitals and orphanages and all this kind of stuff in Westpac. We don't even know where we're going, but it's not going to be anything that, if anything, it's going to be worse, or could be worse than this. And he said, I can't do that. I can't smile on the outside and die on the inside. So he said, I can't, but what I would like to do is, because we hadn't been taking any pictures, he said, I just want to stay with you guys, stay in civilian, I'll take pictures. And he's a pretty good photographer. So he was taking pictures and stuff of the whole thing, and we went to some of the craziest places you'll ever see. I mean, we gave up a whole Liberty Day to go back in country, some of the places, the U.S. attaches and stuff would set these up for us. And we went into some in Bangkok, and Thailand, Japan, and we ended up on AFRTS a couple of nights, the news. We actually ended up on a Japanese news station, and it got to be more of a mission than just clowning around. We really felt like we had become ambassadors, and we got into some of them where a lot of the kids and stuff were maimed. They had, because in Thailand and some of those areas, they still had battlefields and stuff in there. The kids get out. You still hear about it today. They uncover some munitions or something. Well, they get hurt and stuff. They'd end up in these places, and but we would go in there and just change their whole day. But I think they changed ours more than anything. And come to find out, when it was all over and done with, on our way back and stuff, we found out that this had never been done before, not as a group. Now, there was always an individual that would do that just as part of the crew. He would go along with Project Hand Class people. I don't know if you know what that is. They go and paint and repair places. They would just kind of go along. We tried that one time, it didn't work. We were too much of a distraction for them as well, because they all coming over to see what we're doing while the kids are having so much fun. And so we separated ourselves, and we found a way to go work through the military attaches and stuff to go to different places. So, make a long story short, as far as we could tell, and as far as anybody could tell, that was the first organized clown troupe, that had ever been done. So we made it on the cover of the Navy Times, right on the front page, and everything. But yeah, that there's no. I took all the pictures and stuff when he got done, and we laid them all out, numbered all the pictures and stuff. And some guys wanted pictures of these because they were in them, and some of them wanted these. And so it's still negatives back then, so we were sending these things off and making copies of them. But I kept the whole master set of those things, and I put them in envelopes and wrote on where it was, and kind of just put them away. Some years later, probably about 6, 7 years now, from now, I got them all out and started looking through them, and the whole thing come back to me again. So I got my laptop out and started working on that, and actually wrote a book about the whole experience, and with the pictures, lots of pictures in it, but the book is part of it and stuff. And I'm working right now with the Battleship Museum about that very thing, and someday they'll own it, and everybody will be able to get to see what we did. I wish I could have stayed on there forever, but there were a lot of other people who wanted to be there too. So the rotations were kind of quick. But because of all of that, I got sent to NAVCAM's EastPac, Naval Communications Area Master Station, EastPac in Honolulu, Hawaii. And NAVCAM's is a major communications station that commands via satellite and all kinds of other things a huge ocean area. In our case there, it involved all of the EastPac and ships in the Westpac and those that were transiting back and forth and stuff. So we had the biggest area of operations of any communication station in the country. And I was sent there as a training officer, and they had problems with the again, I was JG at the time. I just made lieutenant, and the comm officer there was a lieutenant commander billet, and the person that was in it was getting them in trouble a few times with oversights and stuff. The captain called in one day and said, "I know your training program. I've seen what you guys are doing. Great, but I said I need you in this other spot." I said, "Geez, Captain, I mean, you know, that's a big job." And so he said, "Yeah," and I've talked to others, and we all agree that, you know, you can do this thing. It was 7 different divisions. I had about 250 to 275 enlisted, and about 57 or so to 60 or so civilians and stuff in that department. And it ended up being a really great thing. I mean, I loved it. I loved what I was doing. I had great people working for me. Again, I got them all together, and I said, "You guys, what you're doing is what's making it happen. And we're going to work on that every day, but I'm not the kind of guy that says do it this way. I'm the kind of guy that says, however you can do it, if it works, that's okay with me." And so they took that and ran with it, and stuff. We did some great stuff out there in nav cams, enough to where I got orders from there down to St. Pac, Commander-in-Chief Pacific, which is on the island and stuff with the others, and ended up in the comm department stuff down here, running some global programs and everything. And then Desert Shield, Desert Storm came along, and me and one other guy got picked to go over in the command center and work in the command center there as the startup guys. Now, there was others in our department stuff that went over to work the communications portion of it. But anytime we brought the command center up, it was either he or I that went over there and started it all and got it up and running. And that was the only time in my life that when you came on watch, it was like a U-shaped cubicle, and there was another one on the other side, and like a fourplex. You would work on one side, and all the things you had going on all over the world and stuff that you were doing. When your relief came in 12 hours later, he would start on the other side. And you couldn't really do a watch turnover because he was already busy. And so you put out your fires until you got down to the point where you could say, "I'm just waiting on a call for this or a flight for this or something," and you could go home. So we worked 12 on, 12 off up there during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the tsunami that hit Bangladesh, and Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines were 3 of the biggest things that we set up for and everything. And yeah, it's 12 on, 12 off, but it's about 14, 15, 16 on and 6 or 7 or 8 off. But we finished that up and everything. It was time to rotate and stuff, so I got orders to Chief of Naval Technical Training in Millington, Tennessee, and went down to Centectra and was working some programs. Actually, I had some schools, communication schools, that were assigned to me to revamp and redo the curriculum. And some of the RM schools, as well as the comm officer, afloat and ashore schools. And so I was spent about a year redoing the whole curriculum and stuff on those things, flying back and forth. I mean, we were moving all kinds of surface schools to Great Lakes. They were moving other schools to Pensacola and everything else, and all the construction stuff was going on. And then the captain called me in one day, and he says, "We're going to put you in charge of being point on all these schools moving." So I'm flying for about a year and a half. I'm flying to the West Coast, up north, East Coast, back down south, wherever all the schools were, with rolled up sets of plans, doing redlining and stuff on them and stuff that we were doing things. And but I spent 6 days a week in the air for about a year and a half, flying back and forth while we were moving all these schools. And some weeks was a little bit less than that, but there was a lot of other people involved and everything in it. I was kind of involved in the plant sections of it. There was other guys in curriculum and doing those kind of things too, but it was a big thing when they downsized all of that and made all those moves and stuff there. So at that point, I was fixed to go and get another set of orders and stuff, but my wife, the wives pay a huge price when they move around. They get a job and then you move. They get a job, then they move. Your kids are in school and you move, you know. And when we were there, I only had one daughter left at the house. She was a senior in high school. And my wife had a very good job for a change. And I was at 28 years, and I could have gone 30, but I didn't. I punched out and said, you know, it's time. Think more about them instead of, you know, what I'm doing. And that's the short of a long story. There are a lot of horror stories in there I can share with you, but command by command wise and stuff. It was just, I always seemed to be in the wrong spot at the right time. You know, if that makes any sense to people, but it just did. And somehow or another, I, you know, thank God I had the talent or the experience or people around me that could always make it happen. And I give credit to a lot of people for doing that. No man stands alone when you're doing that kind of stuff. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.